that's critical for ocean rescues to build an ICE facility in a community where immigrants are working the most difficult jobs in commercial fishing, fish processing, agriculture, and protecting us from wildfire. Now, Chief McCarthy, we know that law enforcement has.
Across the country, the debate over immigration enforcement is no longer just about policy. It is about fear, trust, and the relationship between communities and the people sworn to protect them. During a recent congressional discussion, Representative Val Hoyle of Oregon delivered a sharp criticism of the Department of Homeland Security and Secretary Kristi Noem, warning that aggressive ICE operations are putting local law enforcement, immigrant families, and even tribal communities in real danger.
Now I'd like to go to Representative Val Hoyle from the state of Oregon.
I've spoken to many members and leaders in municipal law enforcement. I've spoken to many members and leaders in municipal law enforcement, and they're watching what's happening in Minnesota, and they're extremely concerned about what's going to happen in their communities. Now, I don't represent Portland, Oregon, but it's clearly high on the list of targets of the Trump administration. And we have 9 federally recognized tribes that are watching what is happening with the Oglala Sioux and are wondering if they're next. In my district, DHS is trying to take over our Coast Guard facility that's critical for ocean rescues to build an ICE facility in a community where immigrants are working the most difficult jobs in commercial fishing, fish processing, agriculture, and protecting us from wildfire. Now, Chief McCarthy, we know that law enforcement has done the extremely hard work of building trust with the civilian population. And for any community to respect the authority of law enforcement, they have to believe that officers are operating in their best interest and respecting the rule of law. Stephen Miller has said ICE agents have absolute immunity with no qualifications, that habeas corpus can be suspended at the time of an invasion, and they're looking at that. The president has brought up invoking the Insurrection Act in cities that didn't vote for him and against communities that stand up against unconstitutional and illegal actions of ICE. Kristi Noem accused Renee Good of being a domestic terrorist before even looking at the facts. We have ICE agents that have between 4 weeks of online training and maximum 8 weeks of in-person training with limited background checks being thrown into highly charged situations with the administration egging on aggressive actions and spreading disinformation instead of working to de-escalate what is clearly putting our communities and our local law enforcement in danger. So, Chief McCarthy, could you briefly tell us what kind of training and experience do your local law enforcement officers have, and what does an investigation look like after an officer-involved shooting? Because I do not think there's any comparison to what has happened with the Renee Good shooting.
Thank you, ma'am, for that question. So in Minnesota, the minimum to be a police officer is you have to have a 2-year degree in law enforcement and criminal justice or a 4-year degree in anything. Once you've obtained that degree, we go through a skills-based program that is supervised by the state, and that's anywhere from 3 to 6 months. Then you are eligible to be licensed. Once you are eligible to be licensed, you can then apply at police departments who do a rigorous psychological and background check. Once that is done and you are hired, you then go through a training period, which again is another anywhere from 3 to 6 months with a minimum of 1-year probationary period. As far as after a use of force, an officer-involved shooting, it is very, very important that we do not comment, we do not guess as far as a justification or not a justification. You never want to color an investigation, as difficult as it is to not react to what you see. Professionally, it is very, very important that you don't give an indication if something is justified or not justified until all of the facts are brought in. It's very thorough, and only then does that legal determination get made at the end of a thorough investigation.
All right, thank you very much. Know that we're standing with you, and the Trump administration's use of force was meant to get people to back down, and the longer that you can stand up with our support, the better chance we have of making sure that this stops. We stop this in its tracks. Thank you all for your words.
Thank you, Representative Hoyle. I'd now like to recognize
Hoyle began by explaining that she has spoken with municipal police leaders across her state, and what she is hearing is deep anxiety. Local officers, she said, are watching what unfolded in Minnesota and wondering whether the same chaos could soon reach their own streets. Even though she does not represent Portland directly, she acknowledged that the city is widely believed to be a major target for federal immigration operations. At the same time, Oregon's 9 federally recognized tribes are watching the treatment of the Oglala Sioux and asking a haunting question: are we next? The Congresswoman described a specific conflict unfolding in her district where DHS is attempting to take over a Coast Guard facility that is essential for ocean rescues in order to build a new ICE detention center. That community, she reminded the room, relies heavily on immigrant labor. These are the people working in commercial fishing, fish processing, agriculture, and wildfire protection, some of the hardest and most dangerous jobs in the region. Removing them or terrorizing their families, she argued, would not make Oregon safer. It would weaken the very backbone of the local economy. But Hoyle's strongest concern was not only economic, it was about the rule of law. She warned that trust between police and civilians is fragile and takes years to build. If people begin to see every badge as an extension of immigration raids, that trust collapses. She pointed to comments from White House advisor Stephen Miller claiming ICE agents have absolute immunity and suggestions that habeas corpus could be suspended during what the administration calls an invasion. The president, she noted, has even floated using the Insurrection Act in cities that did not vote for him. Those statements, combined with Secretary Noem labeling Renee Good a domestic terrorist before any investigation, paint a picture of power being used recklessly. Perhaps the most alarming part of Hoyle's remarks focused on training. Many ICE agents, she explained, receive as little as 4 weeks of online instruction and at most 8 weeks in person before being deployed into tense, emotional situations. Compare that with local police standards. Chief McCarthy of Minnesota testified that officers there must complete a 2-year degree in law enforcement or a 4-year degree in another field, followed by months of state-supervised skills training, extensive psychological and background checks, and then another 3 to 6 months of field training with a full year of probation. After any officer-involved shooting, he said, departments are careful not to prejudge the facts because investigations must be thorough and unbiased. That contrast, Hoyle argued, shows why communities are so frightened. Federal agents with minimal preparation are being sent into neighborhoods where even seasoned local officers tread carefully. Instead of de-escalation, the administration appears to be encouraging confrontation, spreading misinformation, and dismissing the professional standards that normally guide use of force. The result is not safety, but confusion, anger, and the risk of more tragedies like the death of Renee Good. Hoyle closed with a message of resistance and solidarity. The use of force, she said, seems designed to make people back down, but communities, local leaders, and ordinary citizens must continue to stand up for constitutional rights. The longer they hold the line, the better the chance that these policies can be stopped before more lives are shattered. It was not just a political speech, it was a warning about